Hare Krishna, good morning. This is Gopinath Das, starting a Srimad Bhagavatam class. I'm going to be speaking in English this time. So let's do it with Jai Radha Madhava. Okay, so as said before, I'm going to give you this class in English. I hope nobody minds. So let's start Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, and we are on first chapter. It's entitled The Life Story of Ajamila. And we have 51. Just read the Sanskrit. Tare tat sodasakalam lingam shakti trayam mahat dhate nusam smritim pumsi harsha shoka bhayartiram. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The subtle body is endowed with 16 parts, the 5 knowledge-inquiring senses, the 5 working senses, the 5 objects of sense gratification, and the mind. This subtle body is an effect of the 3 modes of material nature. It is composed of insurmountably strong desires, and therefore it causes the living entity to transmigrate from one body to another in human life, animal life, and life as a demigod. When the living entity gets the body of a demigod, he is certainly very jubilant. When he gets the human body, he is always in lamentation. And when he gets the body of an animal, he is always afraid. In all conditions, however, he is actually miserable. His miserable condition is called samsmriti, or transmigration in material life. Purport. The sum and substance of material conditional life is explained in this verse. The living entity, the 17th element, is struggling alone, life after life. This struggle is called samsmriti, or material conditional life. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the force of material nature is insurmountably strong. Daivihyesa gunamai mamamaya duratyaya. Material nature harasses the living entity in different bodies, but if the living entity surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes free from this entanglement, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Mamevaya ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Thus his life becomes successful. And the verse again. Tare tat sodasakalam lingam shaktitrayam mahat date nusam smritim pumsi harsha shoka bhayartidam. The subtle body is endowed with 16 parts, the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the 5 working senses, the 5 objects of sense gratification, and the mind. This subtle body is an effect of the 3 modes of material nature. It is composed of insurmountably strong desires, and therefore it causes the living entity to transmigrate from one body to another in human life, animal life, and the life as a demigod. When the living entity gets the body of a demigod, he is certainly very jubilant. When he gets the human body, he is always in lamentation, and when he gets the body of an animal, he is always afraid. In all conditions, however, he is actually miserable. His miserable condition is called samsmriti, or transmigration of in material life. Omagyanatimirandasya Kinanjana Salakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangumulan Haite Grim Yat Kripatam Maham Vande Shri Gurundina Taranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So in this way continues um, the pravacha or topics discussed between Yamadutas and Vishnudutas. The Yamadutas are explaining because Vishnudutas they were asking if they know the real religious principles, why they should take Achamila to be punished in front of Yamaraj. So the Yamadutas are now explaining the principles of their activities. Uh, so they are analyzing the material existence here. So it starts with explaining about the material elements. So material elements are analyzed and discussed in different parts of the Bhakti scriptures. It starts in Bhagavad Gita. Bhumira Nalo Vayu Kamano Pudhya Evacha Ahankara iti Yamene Pinna Parakritir Astada. So this is a little bit different, seemingly a little bit different concept here, but anyway, it's explained that there are in the Bhagavad Gita verse that there are eight elements of material existence, five gross elements, and three subtle elements, starting from earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then the subtle elements mind, intelligence, and false ego. Now, this kind of topic is very much elaborated by Kapila Muni in the third canto of Bhagavatam. So, Kapila Muni is coming up with a further explanation of the different elements, and it is more similar to this verse as it is mentioned. Kapila Muni actually divides these elements into 25, and here we have only 16, and in Bhagavad Gita we had 8. So these are very similar, and they are kind of completing each other or confirming each other's existence. That's how we could see it happening. So here in this way, in this verse, today's verse, there are 5 knowledge acquiring senses, 5 working senses, and 5 objects of sense gratification, and then the mind. And they are said to be subtle body. I mean, we can definitely understand that these knowledge acquiring senses like eyes, tongue, nose, ears, and skin, they are the 5. So they have their effect in the mind. So mind is like a center of all the senses. So they are definitely gathering knowledge to the mind to be analyzed ultimately, which is good and which is bad. And then the mind controls the working senses, legs, hands, and their genital and evacuation sense. Was the tongue also one of the working senses? So these are these are the working senses, and the knowledge and acquiring senses, especially, they are in connection to the objects of the senses. So very elaborate the discussion about analyzing the material world is described here and further elaborated by, I mean, already this is the sixth canto, and it's already elaborated by Kapila Muni in the third canto. So there are objects of sense gratification, as mentioned here, that is taste, touch, sound, form, and smell. So these are the objects of the knowledge acquiring senses. Uh, and these all they have their effect in the mind, and mind is the center point of all these. And then Kapila Muni further elaborates that the subtle body consists mainly on the mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness. Also, is there mentioned, and topmost of all is the eternal time factor, which is actually the representative of Lord. Uh, the Supreme Lord is time. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita also, Kalos me. And very all the living entities, they are very much afraid of time because it diminishes the duration of life. Death is coming. We are closer to death in every second. I just had recently birthday, so that's just 1 year more closer to death and the death of the body. Um, so this body is such and such so many years old, but the spirit soul inside is eternal. So the mind has a very central position because we think in our mind, we feel feelings, and we want things in the world, and we want according to the mind. Mind is like it's always accepting and rejecting things, and we are born in a certain combination of material modes of nature. So that's why we like things which are in those modes of nature which are prominent in our own existence, which resonate with our own desires. And, and therefore, because different people are born in different modes of different combination of three modes of material nature, they have different kinds of desires, different kinds of ideas, and therefore we have this one man's nectar is another man's poison. The people who are fulfilling my particular personal desires, they are my friends, and those who are uh, violating this principle, they are my enemies. And so this is material life. But in Krishna consciousness, we should actually, like the mind is accepting and rejecting things. In Krishna consciousness, we should accept those things which are favorable for our Krishna consciousness, and reject those things which are unfavorable for the progress of, for our progress in Krishna consciousness. This is explained in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion by Srila Rupa Goswami. And there are some further explanations that I think there was 5 principles of pure devotional service. Um, like always be meek and humble, and then accept Krishna as the Supreme Lord, your very life and soul, the ultimate goal in life. Mm, and like that, Srila Rupa Goswami is explaining. Um, so we have examples of these, like we have um, nine ways to perform pure devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Parasevanam, Smaranam, Parasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. In different ways we can perform devotional service. And a great example, as we think about the body as a whole, like in this verse, it was then mentioned how we have knowledge acquiring senses and working senses. And Maharaj Ambarish was engaging all his senses in the service of the Lord. Like there's a good three verses combined together where it is explained how he was using the eyes to see the form of the Lord, his tongue for glorifying the Lord and tasting food offered to the Lord, his nose by smelling the flowers and tulsi leaves offered to the Lord. And these are the knowledge acquiring senses. With ears, he was hearing Krishna Katha, or glorification of the Lord by other great devotees. And then these other knowledge acquiring senses, and then the working senses. With his feet he was walking to the place of pilgrimage, uh, and with hands he was touching or massaging the feet of the great devotees, and so on and so on. So in this way, we can take example from Maharaj Ambarish how to accept things favorable for Krishna's service, favorable for the progress of our Krishna consciousness. So then the verse says further that as we are affected by three modes of material nature, um, then this subtle body, it is composed by insurmountably strong desires. Ooh, we have definitely desires. We are in the material world and we think in terms of I and mine, and we are always thinking in every situation, what is there for me? What is there for my enjoyment? Yeah, that's really natural. I mean, we naturally try to avoid places which are violating uh, our sense of our desire to enjoy in the material world. And it is also kind of recommended in the Vedas that if there's a place where we are not welcomed to go, so then we should stay away from that place. Like this point was explained by Lord Shiva to his newly wedded wife Sati. Uh, Sati was there in Lord Shiva's abode, serving her husband, and she saw that uh, there was a big ceremony coming up in her father's place. Her father was Daksha, and she wanted to go to this ceremony, but because of previous experience uh, by Lord Shiva, that Daksha was simply blaspheming Lord Shiva, even though um, he was advised by Lord Brahma to give one of his daughters to Lord Shiva, namely Sati. So, um, but Daksha was blaspheming Shiva, trying to put him down. Look how dirty he is. He spends time in crematorium areas, and he's covered by ashes and so many bad, so-called bad qualities, externally bad qualities. Daksa was pointing out about Lord Shiva. But Lord Shiva, nevertheless, is a great personality. Yatha Vaishnavanam Shambhu. He is the greatest of Vaishnavas. And so he made an offense. But but at this point, Sati wanted to go to his father's ceremony. But Lord Shiva, her husband, advised her not to go because she might be an unwelcomed guest there and experience some mental trouble or psychological trouble by her father. But Sati's urge was so great that she wanted to go, and and because her father didn't, uh, or her father kind of neglected her because she was now the wife of Lord Shiva. So that's why. Uh, and we can read it from the Bhagavatam how things turned out. There was a great fight between the Lord Shiva's followers mm, and great sages that were gathering there. So um, if we are not welcome somewhere, then we shouldn't go. Uh, that is a kind of you could say, form of self-protection also. So we have lots of desires, strong desires to enjoy the material world in this way. But ultimately, we should try to redirect our desires to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says that we cannot give up our desires. We just have to redirect them towards Krishna and understand how uh, uh, serving Krishna in various ways, um, we can have our desired desires fulfilled, meaning that we definitely become satisfied even though externally we don't get our desires fulfilled. But just by performing devotional service to Krishna, we can uh, definitely have our like there's a saying, satisfaction guaranteed. So we can have our uh, desire to enjoy to be fulfilled and become content, satisfied, yeah, just by serving the Supreme Lord. Mm. So then there was talked about human life, animal life, and demigod life. So this is connected with the modes of material nature, the modes of material nature which we cultivate in this particular life. So it's good to be cautious. It is recommended even at the deathbed or time of departure from this world. Srila Prabhupada, in his bed, he was emphasizing to give up the lower modes of material nature, good passion and ignorance, and cultivate the mode of goodness. And therefore, the mode of goodness is a stepping stone to the transcendental platform. But um, this verse is actually explaining the goals of these particular um, forms of lifestyles. If you are absorbed in mode of ignorance, uh, we can read from Bhagavad Gita what kind of symptoms ignorant people have. They are very lazy, sleepy, arrogant, and live very externally also very lowly life, and therefore one gets an animal body, goes down in the bodily evolution, and it is said that here in this verse that animals, they are always afraid. We can see the actions of animals; they are always afraid. Uh, and this is explained by the Yamadutas, and we can understand that uh, when Yamadutas come, a person at the time of death, a person is going for hellish conditions, and therefore, because it has been his desire to live in a mode of ignorance, his consciousness is lowered on the platform of animal. That's why the hellish planets are there, and therefore he has to, as he's taking birth as an animal, he has to live uh, live his life in fear. But also, if we have some animals and um, we are showing our love for the animals, then we can see how the behavior of animals they change also, and they are very. Uh, we have become their trustworthy worthy friend. So, and then we can give the animals some prasadam. The favorite thing is to go in Sri Mayapur to go to Goshala and feed them some bananas, or if you have some cow laddus. One time I was actually in Vrindavan, and I was there at the Goshala, ISKCON Goshala in Vrindavan, and His Holiness Chanananda Maharaj happened to be there. So, and it happened to be the time when he was usually going to feed the cows. So he asked me to come along, and we took a bucket full, like a 10-liter bucket of cow laddus. They were really like this big, and we had a bucket full of them in. And as soon as we started to even approach the fence where the cows were, the cows went totally mad. I mean, they were running from a long distance from the back of the area to the fence where we were standing. They were sticking their hands out and trying to push each other aside, and they were really enthusiastic. So, um, just a hint: if you want to be a friend of a cows, get some cow ladus, but make sure that you have fence between you and the cows, otherwise you might be injured. Uh, and then the human beings, it is said that they are, yeah. So it is said if you live a life in a mode of passion, then you get a human body. And well, human beings is they are said to always live in a life of lamentation. I mean, we can understand the word passion. Uh, it actually means suffering. Do you have an urge to uh, respond to this suffering in a very passionate way, so that you try to relieve this suffering? You have an urge to do something, and as long as you have not um, reached your goal of desires, then you lament. But as Bhagavad Gita explains, the life in mode of goodness, uh, it is said that senses are enlightened with knowledge. So you are very peaceful and thoughtful, and uh, you are living a very sober, sublime life, and therefore you take a birth as a demigod, and your life will be jubilant. So that's why it's recommended to at least cultivate the mode of goodness. And living in mode of goodness is like it might be feeling poisonous in the beginning, but in the end, it is like nectar. So we can understand from different aspects of our life. Uh, we go to study, and studying is not easy. It takes lots of mental power to be able to study and reach the get the diploma, and with the diploma you can prove that you are learned, and you can go and find yourself a job. That is also a stressful thing, and but in the end you will get a job with a good salary according to the level of your studies. And if you have a dirty room, things are there here and there, all over the floor and tables and everything. And then you just see the trouble of cleaning the room. And then it's so rewarding when the room is clean. So that is the life of goodness. And then there's an interesting thing. Uh, where was it? All right. It talks about reincarnation. Maybe I read it from another verse. Uh, so reincarnation cycle of births and deaths is like a almost perpetual. So it's a continuous almost. It feels like eternity. Like it is said that we have been here in the material world in a cycle of births and deaths since time immemorial. Nobody can trace where it all started, because it's been going on for ages and ages in different forms of life, even a blade of grass or a tree sometime, then coming to an animal form, and finally reaching the human form of life, which is very, very rare, compared to if you look at all the animals, all the bugs and blades of grass, all the trees in the world. So the human life, the amount of human beings is very minimal compared to that. Mm. So, um, but people generally, when they show express their concern about the life and death and different wars and so on, uh, they definitely usually don't have any concept of an understanding that there's an incarnation, a reincarnation, that it's been life after life. As it is said, what we are now, we are the summary of our previous incarnations. People don't consider this at all. They don't understand why they are in a particular form of life just now in this time, and like that. And you cannot find any logical answer except that any other logical answer to this except that accepting reincarnation or the possibility that there is such a thing as reincarnation. Uh, uh, Life doesn't end. We think that we live forever, and that's very natural because we are eternal. And nobody thinks about death, but death can come any moment. And therefore, actually, those who understand about reincarnation, cycle of births and deaths, it seems to be going on forever and forever. But since we are eternal, it's also said, so this is like the material perspective. But from spiritual perspective, our eternal existence in the spiritual world, this our whole cycle of births and deaths, it's just like a flash uh, compared to eternity. So when we get to the spiritual world, sometimes it's said that I had a nightmare. I was dreaming that I was in the material world, but when that's over, then that's a relief. We have woken up from this nightmare because the life is miserable in this material world. That is said in all conditions. However, he's actually miserable. And this miserable condition of life is a transmigration in material life. Abrahama Puana Loka Punar Avatinorjuna Mamupetya tu Kaunteya Punarjanma na Vidyate. So from the highest planet to the lowest, this material world is just a place of misery where a repeated birth and death takes place. But one who attains to my abode, O Arjuna, Krishna says, one who attains Krishna Loka, there will be no more births and deaths. Therefore, it is recommended also by Srila Prabhupada here in the purport as he quotes the Bhagavad Gita verse 7:14, Daivihiya sagunamai mamamaya duratyaya mamevaye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. And it is very difficult to overcome this material, ocean-like material nature, which is composed of the three modes of nature. But one who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord can easily overcome this material world. Okay, I came across with an interesting verse, elaborating verse in the 11th canto. Also, I just go through this. It's about time to end the class soon. This is 11th canto, chapter 9, verse 29. Latva sudurlabamidam bahusam bhavante manusyamarthadam anityam api hadira turnam yateta napated anumrityu yavan nishreyasaya vishaya kalu sarva tasyat. After many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus, a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. So these kind of topics are discussed so many times in throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is just one of them, combining things from different great characteristics in Srimad Bhagavatam. Like Prahlad Maharaj said that Krishna consciousness should be started in the very beginning of life. When as soon as one is 5 years old, one should start heading for the ultimate goal of human life, which is attaining love of Godhead, and also that all kinds of sense enjoyments they are available for lower species of life. Lord Rizabadayev says that the human life is very rare and important, and we shouldn't waste our life in sense gratification, which is available even for animal forms. Uh, and after many births, Pahunam Janmanam Nante Jnanamam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Samahatma Surulabha. So many, uh, so after so many births, one who is sober is getting a real knowledge of life and understands that Vasudeva Krishna is the ultimate goal of life and starts to go his path, worship him, and such a person is very rare. So, birth after birth, we are gradually developing our understanding of a sublime alternative to this uh, material world or material life. Material life sometimes is compared as a prison, and all we are concerned about is what kind of toilet seat we are having in our prison cell. What would be the most attractive one? But it's material world is sometimes compared as a toilet. Just finish your business and get out. Uh, and that should be our mood. Um and we start we simply use all the material elements in the service of the Lord, and that's how you finally get out, starting from Shravanam Kirtanam. So we hear about Krishna and we chant his glories. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I can end here. I can see there are some questions or comments at least. So one man's nectar is another man's poison. Yeah, that's a fact. Um, we can witness this every day. Uh, so what to do? We need to tolerate ourselves. We need to tolerate each other. Uh, and if we uh, keep Krishna as a center, and we understand the philosophy of being affected by different modes, then we can also have understanding of all the other people, what they are made of, what are their natural needs, and then try to be considerate and uh, to help them to be satisfied in their position, and then uh, uh, and then keep a peaceful environment for the uh, auspicious or favorable development of our Krishna consciousness. Hmm. And then there's a comment that a small amount of poison can be healing. Um, hmm. Good to be careful with that, knowing what you are doing. so that the poison doesn't take you over. Um, for example, it is said that some alcoholics have purifying or unfavorable germs killing effect. Uh, but actually, uh, Ayurveda is recommended because in the Vedic context, for example, alcohol, whatever alcohol touches, that is so impure that it cannot be purified even with cow dung. Cow dung is said to be containing uh, uh, how you said antiseptic ingredients, and so it's very purifying cow dung. But alcohol is considered to be um, very much contaminating. Uh, so yeah. Anyway, got to be careful. Understand what your needs are, and well, in the world, yes, to understand what our needs are. Therefore, we should be situated in such a way that our at the same time as needs are being fulfilled, and then at the same time we can make a spiritual progress. So therefore, that's the basis of Varnasrama Dharma, for example. mm, how the society is conducted in such a way that these different duties according to our nature can be fulfilled, and then at the same time making progress in spiritual life. Um, um, Controlling the senses is a challenge. Like many years ago, there was an advertisement of uh, of one liquor, one particular liquor bottle, and the text there was that let your senses guide you. And about one of our brahmachari monks got an idea to print a T-shirt where it was said that don't let your senses guide you. Then we had one sannyasi visiting Finland, and he saw this T-shirt, and he made the final comment: "Let your senses guide you to Krishna." So, like I said before in a class, that we cannot just give up our desires. We just have to redirect them. So somehow or another, if you have uh, urge to gratify your senses, do it in as Krishna conscious way as possible. You like pizza, make nice vegetarian pizza offerable to Krishna and offer it with love and devotion, and then honor the prasadam with love and devotion. Mm. And yeah, well, the principle in progressing in Krishna consciousness, as I mentioned, also accept everything favorable for Krishna consciousness and reject everything unfavorable for Krishna consciousness. Mm. And see also what is the favorable thing. I mean, you need to take into account the environment where you are living in, like the people you are living with. So um, it's good to live with the principle that your surroundings, your uh, closest people are getting favorable form of Krishna consciousness, a favorable picture of Krishna consciousness. Uh, so prasadam is very good thing, our secret weapon. Uh, because if you are um, trying to kind of force somebody to follow strict Krishna conscious principles, then that might be having a counter effect. Like it is said that you cannot make a plant grow by pulling the leaves of the plant. That's unnatural. You need to water the plant, give the plant some sun, what plant likes, and then the plant is growing very healthy. So it might be sometimes a little bit uh, like a twisting of arms with your mind. Um, what should I do in this particular situation? Uh, uh, but yes, try to keep your Krishna consciousness as healthy as possible, Krishna consciousness as healthy as possible, and make it positive, favorable experience for everybody else. Hare Krishna. I think I can stop here now. Thank you very much. I wish you a nice Krishna conscious day. It's a little bit cloudy today here in the South Finland, at least. But Krishna is like a fresh rain cloud, so we can think of Krishna. Always when we look at the sky, we can think of Krishna. And Krishna is um, illustrated as a blue boy. So when there is a clear sky, we can see the blue sky and we can think of Krishna, an unsurmountable sky. Krishna is also not understood by anybody perfectly. And when it's nighttime, the sky is black, and one of the purports or translations of the word Krishna is black. So we can think of Krishna by looking at the sky at night, and when it's cloudy, we can also think about Krishna as the Shyama Sundara, color of fresh rain cloud, pouring the rain of mercy upon us. So in this way, we can just by the effect of nature, we can remember Krishna. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.